Welcome to the Daily Word. We'll be looking at Matthew chapter 4 today. And in particular, I want to focus on the first 10 verses. We'll call it the anatomy of temptation, because Jesus is tempted by the devil 3 times in the wilderness. So let's walk through these temptations and see what is at the heart of each one. The first temptation, you could say, is provide for yourself. Look what happens. Verse 3, the tempter came to him and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." Well, it says if, but Satan wasn't really in question as to whether Jesus was the Son of God. What he really meant was, since you are the Son of God. And the idea is, Jesus, you're the Son of God. What in the world are you doing suffering in the wilderness? Starving, hungry, miserable. Well, that's incompatible with you being the Son of God. Surely you have the right and the power to meet your own needs, don't you? So the nature of this temptation wasn't feed yourself, as if it's wrong to eat when you're hungry. The nature of the temptation was provide for yourself. Take matters into your own hands. Exercise your divine right, Jesus, to meet your needs, even if it goes outside of the will of the Father. And yet, what did Jesus say? Well, verse 4, but he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." That's Deuteronomy 8:3. In essence, Jesus was saying, I will not wrestle control from God and then control my own life. I will not meet my needs in an artificial, sinful way. Instead, I'm going to trust upon God to satisfy my needs. I won't take matters into my own hands. I won't provide for my own needs. Let's look at the second temptation. The second temptation, you could say, is presume upon God. Presume upon God. Let's look what Satan does. Verse 5, then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against the stone." So Satan takes him to a place at the corner of the roof of the temple. Probably, Josephus says, the ancient historian, it was about 450 feet up. And so Satan takes him there and says, listen, he quotes from Psalm 91, throw yourself off, God will catch you. The angels basically will catch you. So what Satan does is take a verse about trusting God and he twists it to making it about tempting or testing God. Well, what does Jesus say in response? Verse 7, Jesus said to him, again, it is written. He goes back to Scripture, back to Deuteronomy, this time Deuteronomy 6:17. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. What Jesus was saying is, it is inappropriate, illegitimate to force God's hand and to make him act in a way so as to save you. In other words, don't put yourself in this really challenging spot just so God is forced to save you. So you manipulate him into coming to your rescue. Because that verse from Psalms was not about forcing God to prove his faithfulness by protecting Jesus. It wasn't about forcing God to prove his care for Jesus by protecting him. It was saying you can trust God. It was not a license to tempt God. So Jesus responds by saying, no, Satan, that's inappropriate. We are not, as Christians, meant to try to force God's hand to do anything. We're not to presume upon God and treat him as our genie, get ourselves in a royal mess on purpose, and throw up our hands and say, well, you got to save me now. No, don't presume upon God. The third temptation, let's look at this last one. It is promote your agenda. That's the heartbeat of this final temptation. Promote your agenda. Look at what Satan says. He takes him up on a very high mountain, and then on verse 9 he says, all these I will give you, all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Well, what Satan did is offer Jesus a shortcut. He offered him a shortcut to all the glory and the kingdoms. And he said, listen, I'll give you the kingdom without a cross. I'll give you glory without pain. All you must do is worship me. It was a shortcut to God's will. You don't have to go to the cross, Jesus. We can make it happen right now. All you got to do is worship me. Well, what did Jesus say? Verse 10, then Jesus said to him, "Be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." That's Deuteronomy 6:13. And the lesson is, don't promote your own agenda. Don't seek to shortcut God's will by getting what you want at a time when God doesn't want it for you. Sure, Jesus could have worshiped Satan and seemingly have sped up the process of receiving the glory from all the kingdoms of the world, but that wasn't God's will for him, and it wasn't God's way for him. And in a similar way, Jesus says us as believers, we're not to promote our agenda and to shortcut God's will by getting it now in a way that God doesn't want for us. And so he says, don't promote your own agenda. So as we review these three temptations, first it is, negatively, don't provide for yourself. Number 2, don't presume upon God. And number 3, don't promote your own agenda.